Okay, welcome to another video. What we're going to be doing today is taking a look at a new distribution called CyberOS, which is built with Qt Quick and is based on Arch Linux. Now, as it's fairly new, the whole website is still a work in progress and there's not a whole lot of information about it on the website, but we can see the CyberOS team, and there is a name here I recognise, which is Simon Peter, who is the author of AppImage and Hello System BSD operating system. Now, the ISO for this is 1.5 GB in size, and we're going to jump into the live environment now and get this installed. Right, so here we are in the live environment. Now, as per usual, we are going to be installing this natively, but for those of you who like to skip the installation parts of these videos, there'll be a timestamp down below which will take you straight to the installed desktop. So the installer we are going to be using for our system is Calamares. Let's just quickly choose our language and go to the next step. Europe London is the place to be, and next. So English UK is the layout for me, and let's just quickly test it to make sure it's all working, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so for partitions, I'm just going to do the erase disk and see what options it gives us with our swap partition. So we're going to use the Drevo X1, go for erase disk, and we do have some options here to configure our swap. So we can go for no swap, swap and no hibernate, so that'll create you a smaller swap partition, and then swap with hibernate, which will expand the size of your swap to be large enough for hibernation, and then we can do away with the partitions entirely and choose to swap to a file. As I use hibernate on my own machines, we're going to test swap with hibernate and make sure it's all working on our installed machine. So that's going to give us 3 partitions, one for our EFI, one for our root partition, which is using ext4 as its default file system, and then a nice large swap there of 34.5 GB. Next. Okay, user account time. So we're just going to call this one Cyberboy, type in our password, and usually I would log in automatically, but I'm going to choose to go straight to the login screen so we can see how that's all been set up. And next. Okay, so we've got some options here for packages. So first up we have Linux kernel, so let's just expand that. So by default we're going to be using the stock Arch kernel, but we can also choose the Zen or hardened kernels. I shall leave it on the stock. So for browsers we've got a couple of different options, the default being the Chromium web browser, but we can also choose Mozilla Firefox. I'll leave it on the default for now. And now for display managers, so basically your login screen, we can choose either LightDM or GDM. I'll leave it on GDM as that is the default, but of course we could choose LightDM if we preferred. So for fonts, again, I'm going to leave that on the default, which is JetBrains Mono. And then we have an option here for drivers for either Intel, AMD, NVIDIA or VMware. I'm going to go ahead and use AMD as that is the hardware that I am using. And next. Okay, so that is everything. So I'm going to pause the video here while this installs, and I'll be back once it's finished. Okay, so the installation has now complete. It took a good few minutes on my machine, but let's reboot and check out our freshly installed CyberOS desktop. Okay, so here we are at our login screen. So before we log in, I just want to go to the settings at the bottom right here and see what options we have for different desktop environments. Okay, interesting. So it's defaulting to the GNOME desktop, and obviously because we installed a GDM as our display manager, it is also going to install some parts of GNOME. So if I was to go back and reinstall this, I would choose LightDM instead. So we've also got GNOME on Xorg and in the Cyber desktop. So I'll be interested to see what our default display server is on Cyber, whether it's X11 or Wayland, but we'll check that out once we are in our desktop. And here we are at our freshly installed desktop, and actually I do really quite like the way it looks. So it's giving me serious Deepin vibes at the moment with the single dock or panel at the bottom with the nice rounded corners. Now before we do start taking a look around, I do want to quickly open up a terminal and see if we can quickly check what our display server is, either X11 or Wayland. So we're going to type in echo. We're going to do a $, and then we're going to type in xdg_session and then type, and then that will tell us what display server we are using, and by default we are using X11. While we've got a terminal open, let's just quickly see if there's any updates we need to grab, and then we'll start taking a look around. Okay, so it appears we're all up to date and we should be good to go. Now, do we have NeoFetch installed? We did in the live environment, we don't. So let's quickly install NeoFetch, like so, and then we can just have a quick look at how many packages we have got installed out of the box, bearing in mind we chose GDM in the installation. So let's now run NeoFetch, and we can have a little look at what's going on. So of course we're using the kernel 5.12.1. Package wise we have only got 506, bearing in mind we have also just installed NeoFetch. The desktop environment is Cyber, and predictably the window manager is KWIM. Okay, so I think we'll start off by just going over the desktop and how everything's been set up for us out of the box. So it shouldn't take us too long. It appears to be quite a nice minimal setup. We have the single dock or panel at the bottom here, and at the very right hand side we have the time, volume slider and the connection, and it all appears to be one button. So if we click that, We can then get into the power options here. So from here we can suspend, log out, reboot or shut down. We don't appear to have the option there to hibernate, so we might have to do that with the terminal when we test that out. And then we've also got some settings here, so we can jump straight into the settings. And then is this interactable, the user? It doesn't appear to be. And then we have some options for the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and then we have the volume slider. And then just beneath that, it again shows us the date and time. Now at the very left, we have our application launcher. We have a search bar at the top, so we can just search for anything and hit enter. No, so that doesn't work at the moment. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen here, we have one little dot which will be your pages indicator. So as you install more applications and your sort of application launcher populates and creates new pages, you can then switch through them like that, I'm going to imagine. Okay, so let's start off with a quick right click on the desktop and see what we can do there. So all we can do there is go into the change wallpaper, but we'll check out all of the settings in just a moment. So I think what I want to do is just quickly see what applications we do have installed out of the box. Bearing in mind we don't have a whole lot of packages installed, so I'm not expecting a whole load here. So we have Qt Linguist, and it's also blurred the background as you can see when we're at application launcher. And I just want to see if that blurs it as well. So there is a nice bit of transparency here as well on the little pop-up shelving for the sort of connections, time and all of that good stuff. Okay, so we have Qt Linguist, we have the SSH server browser, terminal, and then we have the ZeroConf and VNC server browsers. We have an audio recorder. I'm not sure if this is one of their own applications or not, but we'll check all that out in just a moment as well. Let's keep moving. We then have the file manager, so let's have a look at this file manager. So at the moment it doesn't appear we have anything in our home folder. Let me just quickly double check that as well. So the home folder's only got the one folder in it at the moment, which is music. So what can we do with our home folder? So here's our sidebar. We have our path at the top, and we can just click that to go back, and then we have some forward and backwards buttons here. And then we can also change the view, so that's a list, and that's going to be your grid, and let's just create a couple of new folders so we can see what that all looks like. So let's go back into a terminal. I've noticed we haven't got any keyboard shortcuts for anything, so Control-Alt-T isn't opening up the terminal, and left super isn't opening up the application launcher. So I think what we'll do is we'll just make a few folders in our home folder to see what it looks like with a few different folders there in the different views. Let's go for documents, videos, and pictures for now. And now let's go into our home folder and see what it looks like. There we go. So it does have nice specific like folder icons for each folder. So for documents, you have the nice little document in the middle. Music, you have the music symbol. Pictures, you have a picture, and then videos as well. Now clicking on that, so it's a nice double click instead of a single click to actually open up a folder. And if we right click on something, does it not give it a shadow as you do it? It doesn't. So a right click, we can open, copy, cut and remove, and then we can rename and go into the properties, and let's see what the properties view looks like. Okay, I don't think that's yet been implemented. Let's try that one more time. No, okay. And now let's check out the sort of list layout there. There we go, and then that's going to put it in a list and then give you some details about those folders and when they were created, etc. And while we've got a couple of applications open, do we have drag to the sides of the screen to split? We do indeed. Let's go and open up our sound recorder and see what that looks like now with these split. There we go, and it does retain the sort of nice rounded corners as well. And let's just close one of these off and then check out a full screen application. Okay, so we do have some nice gapping around the actual panel at the bottom there. I'm going to see if we can make that panel a bit smaller. I don't think we can right click on the actual panel itself, so I'm going to imagine that's all controlled in the settings, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So that's the file manager. We then have the calculator, all very nice and clean. Again, very kind of Deepin-esque sort of design from what I can tell, with the rounded corners and clean simple UI. Let's go back into here. And then we have the V4L2 test and capture utilities, the Qt design and assistant. We have advanced network, we have Chromium, but of course we could have also chose to install Firefox in the installation. And let's see how Chromium is themed and whether it's following the same sort of theming as everything else. It does appear to be. Okay, let's close that off for now. And now let's go back into our application launcher and see what else we've got. So we have the settings, and we're going to go into that in just a moment because I'm quite intrigued to see what we can actually do so far in the settings. We then have disk usage, and then we also have disks, which I'm going to imagine is going to be known disks. It is indeed, and as you can see, this is the partition layout that we have, and there is our nice large swap partition, which we'll test with hibernation in just a moment. Okay, I think what we'll do now is spend a bit of time going through the settings and seeing what we can do. Okay, so here we are in the settings, and I'm also going to see if we can actually pin these applications to our bar at the bottom. We can indeed, so that's very handy. Do we get any sort of overview when we hover over it? We don't appear to. Okay, so here we are in the settings in the account. So we currently have the one user, and we can show additional settings here, so we can choose to automatically log in. We'll do that and see if that actually works, and it's set up to work properly with GDM. So it's going to ask us for a password. Okay, and then we can also add a user, and let's see what that looks like as well. So very simple standard stuff. We can then add our user, verify the password, and then choose whether it's a standard or administrator user. Okay, not too much going on in the actual account section. We can click that though, and then we can also choose a custom picture for our user. We'll do that in a little moment as well. Okay, so for display, okay, so we don't appear to have any options here for the actual display at the moment, but we can change the scaling. So it does have the scaling out of the box from 1 to 125, 15, 175 and 200. However, for the moment we might see if we've got XR&R installed. That way we can at least make sure that we are using the correct resolutions. Let's see if we've got that installed. We don't. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a moment, and we'll also install XR&R and then check the resolutions are all as they should be. So let's close that off for now. So for network, here we go. So we don't have any Wi-Fi on this computer. We are Ethernet only, and we can see that. Can we click that? We can't. Can we click that? Nope. We can turn Wi-Fi off. So we'll just do that anyway, as I have no Wi-Fi on this machine. And then we're going to go down into appearance. Okay, cool. So it does have some actual options that we can do to configure the appearance. I don't think there's a whole lot you can do with custom theming and fonts though. So let's have a look. So we're currently in the light theme. Let's jump over to the dark theme. Oh, I think I prefer the dark theme actually. The panel looks a whole lot nicer, especially with the blur and the transparency there. And now let's go into our application launcher and open up our files manager and see what that looks like in the darker theme. Okay, there we go. I think I probably do prefer the dark theme. It's got a bit of a sort of white border there. I'm not too sure if I like that or not, but the dark actual theming is very nice. And now we can choose different accent colors, which are going to be the blues here and stuff that you see in the sidebar of your file manager, etc. So we're currently on the default. Let's check out the red. There we go. So there we go. So it's changed the accent colors. No waiting around. Very quick. And now let's also check out the green, the purple, the pink, and the orange, and then back to the default of the blue. Okay, let's close this file manager and keep moving. I am going to leave it on the light theme for now. And now if we go down, we can check the font. So we have the general font, which is Noto Sans that we chose in the installation, and then the fixed font is Noto Sans Mono. And then we have some font sizing here, so it's hard to tell what we're currently on. It doesn't, I can just about see an outline on small, I do believe. So let's start from huge and make our way back. So let's go for huge. Is that changing anything? I don't know if that's been set up properly yet either. It has, so there we go. We can see our font is now much larger in our file manager. Now let's check out large. Has that changed it? Let's close that and reopen it once more. I don't think so. I tell you what, let's leave it on small because it doesn't appear that these are all sort of working anyway. And now let's see if that's actually gone back to the small size that we were using beforehand. There we go, so that appears to be back to normal. Okay, I think that's everything that we can do in the appearance. I do like the light and dark themes though. Again, I'm getting very kind of Deepin-esque vibes here, especially with the settings as well. Then just beneath that we have a wallpaper. So let's have a look. Okay, so it appears to have quite a nice little selection of different wallpapers out of the box. Let's see what it looks like with a more lighter wallpaper. So we'll check out this one. So a simple single click, and that's then changed our desktop wallpaper. And then we can also do four-way split in the corners there of the bottom left, top right, etc. Okay, now we're going to go down to the dock or the panel at the bottom here. Again, not a whole lot of options that we can do in it at the moment, but again, this is all very new. So we appear not to be able to do a top panel, so we can only do left and bottom. So let's go and check out what our panel looks like on the left. Okay, so it retains the same sort of length, almost edge to edge of our screen there. And now let's put it back at the bottom. In fact, let me see if the application launcher behaves any differently. Okay, so it does appear to look a little bit different in this view because obviously the panel is now there and it's still on the screen. So it's sort of moved the way the icons are looking. So if we go back into the bottom now, and then have a look at the application launcher once more. As you can see, it's now got more sort of width to actually spread the application's icons. Okay, let's hope that the sizing here is all set up nicely. So we're currently on medium. Let's start at huge. Okay, that is definitely very huge. And then let's go to large, back to medium, and then check out small. Okay, so I think small is what I'm probably going to leave it on. Let's see what that looks like in a full screen. There we go, so that gives us a whole lot more room on our screen there, so I'll be leaving that on small. Okay, so for languages, we can then choose our different languages. It says that we're currently on the United States, but I don't think that we are. Let me just test out my... Oh, the language will be, but our keyboard layout should be normal. There we go, it is indeed. Okay, let's close that off, and then if we was on a laptop, we could also check out the battery options. And then last but not least, we have the about. So let's have a look at what it displays in the about. So it just gives you some OS info and some hardware info. So we got our RAM size there. And then it lists you off the CyberOS team. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything that we can look at insofar as the settings itself. What I'm interested in doing is seeing if we can get the sort of PAMAC GUI installed and then install a few packages there and see how all that looks and whether it's themed properly on this desktop. Okay, so I thought it would be worth checking out how much RAM we're using on a fresh boot before we go ahead and make any changes to our system with new applications. And as you can see right there, it's looking pretty decent at under 600 MB at 551 MB, which is not too bad at all. Now, I also tested out the auto login that we set in the settings, which did also work. So I think what we'll do now is go ahead and install some applications and set it all up and see how we do. Okay, so we've just installed the PAMAC AUR with Yay, and as you can see there, it does indeed have a nice little icon ready to go for it. So what we're going to do is jump straight into it. Before we install some new packages, I thought I'd quickly show you some of the installed. So for example, as we can see here, they are a lot of their own applications. So we have Cyber Calculator, Cyber Disk Image, CyberDoc and CyberFM, which I'm just going to imagine is indeed the file manager. So let's open up a terminal and just double check that. I'm just going to type in CyberFM and that should go ahead and launch the file manager. And there we go. So I think there's a few more here that have got Cyber in the beginning specifically. So we have the Cyber Icon theme, the Cyber KWin plugins, Cyber Launcher, Cyber Meta, CyberOS base, and there we go. And we have the CyberOS system as well as the keyring and all of that good stuff. So I think what we're going to go ahead and do is install a few packages, one of them being XR and R, and then we can make sure all of the resolutions and stuff are working as we'd expect. And we're going to get this one here, which is Xorg XR and R, so we're going to install that one. And then we're going to go back, and then we're also going to go ahead and install some media applications, because you might have noticed the base install as it currently stands doesn't include any kind of media playback applications for the moment. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just install something like VLC. So we're going to type in VLC like so. Let's go ahead and install VLC, and I think we're also going to grab GIMP, and then we'll leave it there for now, and then we'll see how we go with these new applications. Let's grab that one, and then let's also go ahead and get GIMP, and then we should be good to go. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and install these packages, and I'll be back once they're finished. Okay, so all of our applications have now been installed, and let's just see if they've integrated nicely with the system, and they've got a nice little icon theme and all of that good stuff. So we're going to our application launcher, and there we go. So we have two new applications here, which are VLC and GIMP, and we do indeed have nice icons for them. And it's preferable for me to have square icons with rounded corners, which is why I always go for arc icons, and I do actually very much like these icons. So let's just see what they look like in this system now. So we'll quickly open up GIMP and see how that looks. There we go. So pretty standard sort of stuff there for GIMP, and let's go ahead and also open up VLC as well. Continue. Brilliant, there we go. So what I want to do now is go ahead and just type in xrandr in the actual terminal and see if all of our resolutions are what they should be. So let's open up a terminal, type in XR and R, and there we go. So we can see that we are using 1920 by 1080 resolution. So I think to wrap things up, what I do want to do before we give some final thoughts of this project as it currently stands is see if hibernation is working. So we're going to go ahead and open up a few things. Let's also open up a file manager, and let's go ahead and open up a terminal window, and then we're going to use that window to call a hibernation and see if that's all working. So we're going to go system ctl hibernate, and hopefully, okay, we are back, and as you can see there are no applications on our screen, so we've got a completely empty desktop, which means unfortunately for me hibernation hasn't quite worked correctly on my machine as it currently stands, but your mileage might vary. And I did try a few different times in different ways, but it just wasn't playing ball. But I think I'm going to wrap it up there and give some final thoughts of this distribution as it currently stands. I really like it, so it's obviously got a long way to go before it's ready to be a sort of on your actual machine as your daily driver OS, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it and see how it goes as it develops further. I do recommend though, if you want to have a little play around with it, go ahead and install it on a virtual machine and see what you think. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and if you've really enjoyed it, you can consider supporting me on Patreon and join the Discord. There's a link in the description below. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.